Hi, this is Mrs. Slater, and today we're going to add and subtract rational expressions. Before we begin, I do want to look at the pre-algebra skills here on the side, because we will need to know how to do regular fractions without, before we can begin with the variables. Okay, so on the first one, if they have the same denominator, we may use that for the denominator in the final answer. And then we take the top two numerators and add them together. So our final answer, well, not final answer, it'd be 2 over 2, which equals 1. Now that would be our final answer. Same with subtraction. If we have the same denominator, we may use it in the final answer. 3 minus 2 would be on the top, and after combining like terms, you get an answer of 1/4. Now we're going to use those same two steps that we just did. You're going to use the same denominator for the answer. And then we're going to add or subtract, depending on what it's given. We're going to subtract the numerators. So there may be some combining like terms and etc. Okay, so on the first one, you can see our common denominator is y. So the whole thing is going to be over y. And then we'll put 5 plus y plus 7, because we're going to have to add all of those together. And then y plus 12, because the like terms are the 7 and the 5, all over y. So that's going to be our final answer. Now I do want to warn you, do not be tempted to cross anything out. The y's are going to remain there because of the addition and subtraction sign. So just leave that one alone. Okay, example number 2, you also have a common denominator, but this time it is x minus 5. On the top, we're going to add everything together. And then combine like terms. So I see I have x squared terms, so that would be 3x squared. And I have 5x and negative 19x to give you negative 14. And then the last two we have are negative 9 and positive 4 to give you a negative 5. And that still will be all over x minus 5. Now before you move on to the next one, always check to see if it factors. 3x and 5, I'm going to show that off to the side here. I'm going to do the Batman method, which is to bring these together to get 15x squared, negative 15x squared. And are there factors of negative 15 that will give you negative 14? And since there is, I'm going to go ahead and write those down. Bring the 3x squared down to the side here, and the negative 5. Take out what's in common. So I end up with 3x quantity x minus 5, take out an x, and I end up with x plus 5 on this side. And I notice I made a mistake earlier, and you may have noticed this already, but I'm going to go ahead and change that little negative to a positive. Okay, because it's negative 15 and a positive 1, they're going to give me negative 14. Okay, so now that I've corrected my mistake, I am only going to take out a positive 1. So I'm going to put a positive 1 right here instead. And then what I'd be left with is x minus 5. Okay, so then my final factored answer for the numerator will be 3x plus 1 and x minus 5. So now I'm going to transfer that over to our original problem. And just like yesterday's lesson, anything you can cancel with a product, you may do so. So those can go away, leaving me a final answer of 3x plus 1. Okay, I want you to go ahead and push pause and try the next two on your own. Okay, now that you're back, b plus 2 would be the common denominator. A minus b is going to be on the top. Nothing fancy there. The next one, we have x squared plus y squared on the bottom. And 4x plus 7 minus all of it. So be careful here. Minus all of it would make that 3y, a negative 3y plus 5. So put a little star and just go back to that and just remind yourself about that. Putting all the like terms together would be y plus 12. X squared plus y squared would be on the bottom. And there's no factoring that can happen there, so that's going to be your final answer. Now when you're dealing with a different denominator, there is going to be a little more work involved. So let's go to some pre-algebra things without variables. Okay, in this one, 4 and 5 are the denominators, and think of a lowest common denominator that they both go into. And the lowest one would be 20. So whatever you multiplied to get the 20, you're going to have to do the same to the top. So multiplying by 5 and multiplying by 4 will give you a common denominator of 20, and then you add the numerators to get 17 over 20. Okay, on the next one, 4 and 7, the least common denominator would be 28. I had to multiply by 7 on the first one, so I'm going to multiply 7 on the top. Same with the next one, I'm going to multiply by 4, so on the top as well. 21 minus 8 is going to be on the top, and the common denominator is going to be on the bottom. So you end up with 13 over 28. Okay, now let's apply those in the steps that we have. So you're going to have to get a common denominator for your first step. The second step, we're going to add or subtract, just determining on which one is given, the numerators. So not a whole lot different from the last screen. Okay, on this first one, if we're going to get them to be exactly the same, you can see they're very close, but they are not exact. So if I multiply these both by -1, they will be exactly the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and rewrite this. 3x squared plus 4 all over x minus 5. And now the top would be a negative x squared plus 7 over a negative 5 plus x, which if you flip those around, they're going to be exactly the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that just so it's not confusing. It would be x minus 5. Okay, so now that I have the same denominator, I can put my numerators together and I get a 3x squared minus, so that's 2x squared plus 11 for the final answer because neither one of those factors. Okay, similarly on this next one, we have a negative that is our only barrier between the next step. So if I multiply this by -1 and the next one by -1, then I'll be able to solve. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this. 4x squared over 2x minus y minus, I have a negative 7x squared now that I multiply by -1. And if I multiply both those by -1, it ends up being 2x minus y. So now that I have a common denominator, 2x minus y will be here in the denominator, and then 4x, two negatives make a positive, so 4 plus 7 is going to be 11x squared. Neither one of them factor, so I know that's going to be my final answer. Okay, I want you to go ahead and push pause and do number 7 on your own. Okay, now that you're back, what does one need versus the other? If we're going to get a common denominator, this one right here would need a 7 to multiply through it by, and this one is going to need a 3x. So if I multiply both those together, I'd get 21x. Okay, so what you do to the denominator, you're going to have to do to the numerator as well. So that's 7, and this one is 3x. Okay, so everything is over the common denominator of 21x, and then 3x times 3x is 9x squared, and then 4y times 7 is 28y. It does not look like there's anything that factors. 9 and 28, there's no common factor there. X squared, so that is going to be your final answer. Okay, and then the next one, you'll notice that we have two trinomials in the denominator. So that's the first thing I want you to do is factor. What are the factors of that trinomial? And same with the second term. What are the factors? Push pause, find out. So hopefully we have a match, and you'll notice that we are very close into what the common denominator is. They both have a y minus 3, but they do not share the other factor. So that's what we're going to have to multiply to both sides. This one needs a y plus 5 to equal each other. So what you do to the bottom, you're going to have to do to the top. This one needs a y minus 4. So we're going to multiply that by the bottom and by the top. Okay, so I'm running out of room. I'm going to get another piece of paper, but go ahead and do the next step. So now that we have a least common denominator, I'm going to put everything in the denominator and then combine like terms. So I'm going to write out what we have Got to worry about that subtraction sign, so that's another reason why I want to write everything out to make sure I've got everything covered, because this means minus the entire quantity. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind when you were doing the math. Okay, so I would like you to push pause and go ahead and FOIL this and FOIL these two binomials. Okay, so hopefully we match. Foiling the first, you get 4y squared plus 15y minus 25 minus all of it, which is y squared plus 3y minus 28. Now there are going to be some problems where the steps just keep going on and on and on. So right here I put LCD instead of writing all of that out every single time. So just in case if you would like to save a little time, you can do that as well. Okay, so now that we have all of the LCD and we can combine like terms. So I'm taking that negative and multiplying it through. So I have 4y squared plus 15y minus 25 minus y squared minus 3y minus 28 all over the LCD. Push pause and solve. So we combine like terms and got 3y squared plus 12y minus 53. That does not factor. If you do find that it factors, I'll give you some extra credit tomorrow. So then our final answer, we don't want to put LCD for the final answer. We want to take the original least common denominator for our final answer. So that is it for that one. Alright, so let's go back to the previous. Okay, so the next three, I would like to just get you started and I want you to finish them for class tomorrow. For example, the first one, this one needs an A to be the same, and this one needs an A plus 3. Now the denominators are exactly the same. So continue with that one and we'll talk about it tomorrow. The next one, the denominator factors into x minus 1 and x plus 1 because it's difference of two squares. The next one you'd factor out a negative 1 and you'd be left with x minus 1. And then the last one does not factor at all. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and have you stop there. We're going to save this one for class. You do not have to do this last one, but please finish 9 and 10 for class tomorrow. Have a fabulous day.